I recently picked up a Canon point-and-shoot camera to use for YouTube and as a webcam. I spent a few weeks with it trying to find out whether it's still relevant in 2023. I'll share my findings and take you through some of my learning curves. Let's go. Design-wise, I always liked the way it looked. I remember a few years back when I wanted to shoot my first YouTube video, I researched a few cameras and this one was actually my first choice. But I ended up settling for the Sony HS740 simply because it had a bigger sensor at the time. It had a 1-inch sensor and it's almost the same design and the same components you would find in the very well praised RX100 lineup from Sony. But this was always the back of my mind. I remember that camera had a 30x zoom capability and I was quite impressed with it, and I was always wondering what would it look like if I had a 40x zoom. This one here actually takes it even further because it has, on top of the 40x, you can zoom in at an additional 40x digital besides the 40x optical zoom. Now, to give you an idea of what it's like to have a 40x on a point and shoot, I'm gonna put it next to 300mm lens for a full frame camera that only does half as much as the Canon, just to show you how capable this camera is when it comes to zoom. If you wanted to get something or a similar zoom on a full frame camera, you would have to get one of those gigantic zoom lenses that'll cost you an arm and a leg. Now, to utilize the zoom capability, Canon added a button here that if you press, it actually zooms out so that it'll let you see what you're actually looking at, and then the moment you release it, the zoom lens springs back to where it originally was. This helps you actually frame your shot better, and it helps you make sense of what you're looking at, so it's quite a nice touch. Another thing that I really like about it is the burst mode, which is basically what it does is when you put it on the burst mode, it will shoot a combination of still photos in quick succession. This is quite useful for when you're watching a sporting event. I've actually tried it and it's not bad. It's really good actually. Another thing I like about the Canon is the time-lapse ability. Fortunately, my Sony ZV-E10 doesn't offer a user-friendly time-lapse ability. It is possible, but it's fortunately reliant on software to string together the pictures that it takes and spit out a video, versus in the Canon you can do that without the need of any external software. Image stabilization. Fortunately, this camera does have one, meaning it will help with your videos if you're someone who uses this camera for videography. The only thing is you have to consider the crop factor. Now, normally it's not a big deal, but you have to consider the fact that the camera actually crops in a bit once you switch to 4K shooting. So there's two types of crops, the one you get from image stabilization and the one you get from shooting in 4K. But it does help and it's a welcome addition. Now let's talk about some of the things I didn't really enjoy or like. There are quite a few actually. Let's start with the inability to use an external microphone. Unfortunately, although this is somewhat geared or advertised towards vloggers with its flip-up monitor or screen, fortunately there's no ability to use an external microphone. As we all know, most cameras, I would say all cameras, don't usually have good microphones, so the ability to add in a microphone actually helps with your video experience. No viewfinder. I usually wouldn't I don't mind it. It's not a huge deal, but I actually enjoyed the viewfinder on the Sony HX99. So and that camera had a very similar features, and it was almost identical in size. So it's, you know, it's not a deal breaker for me. I mostly shoot my videos indoors, so it doesn't make a huge difference. No raw files. Fortunately, this camera doesn't offer that feature, meaning you're stuck with whatever you have captured in the camera. You can still do some editing or post editing. Unfortunately, it will not be in the same level as you would get from a raw file. Again, I don't see it as a deal breaker, as I think most people who will be using this camera will not be doing any post editing. So it's not a huge deal, but it's something to note. The other thing I didn't like about this camera is the no slow-mo support. The fastest frame rate that it supports is at 60 frames. Even if you drop the quality down to 720p, it will still shoot at 60 frames per second, meaning even if you try to do it manually by extracting the video and trying to edit it, it's not possible because the highest is at 60 frames per second. Now let's talk about low light performance. Unfortunately, this camera does not perform well in low light conditions. If you're planning to use it at night, the pictures are going to be soft, they're going to be grainy. You're not going to get a very usable footage. It does well during the day, but in the night, pictures quickly fall apart. And then last but not least, the no support for panorama shots, which is very strange. I mean, especially if you're using this camera for vlogging or for traveling, not having is actually kind of strange. Now, before I close the video, I just want to share my experience of using this as a webcam. The first thing I did was download the EOS webcam utility, which is a software provided by Canon. Unfortunately, that software does not support this camera, so I had to use a different method. I'm going to show you how to use it as a webcam without spending too much money. You literally need, I think, about $20 or $30 to do it. All you need is a cheap capture card that you can buy on Amazon and a micro HDMI to a full HDMI. What I struggled with the most was to get a clean HDMI. I had to scroll through Reddit threads and search a few online articles, but the solution was surprisingly simple. All you had to do was press this button right here that says info, and it will get rid of the information on the screen. Now, if you still want to buy this camera in 2023, I would say go for it. Despite everything that I spoke about, I actually really like it, despite what it offers versus what you lose. In my opinion, it's a fair trade. I do have another camera that covers for the shortcomings or downfalls of this camera, so I'm okay with that. Even for someone who just wants something quickly, I would say this is a good camera. It's not the best. If you ask me, I would say go for the Sony RX100, or if you want something similar in zoom range, go for the Sony HX99, as it has a 30x zoom, and both these Sony cameras have a 1-inch sensor, meaning they will give you a far more usable photos and video quality. Overall, I enjoyed it and I really liked it. I hope you did like this review. If you have any questions or you'd like to ask me something, leave it down in the comments below and I'll try my best to answer them. That's been it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.